Are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Those were the words that I desperately wanted to hear as I stood atop the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, staring and leaning over the 4-foot-nothing rail, peering down to the looming waters below, right before I catapulted myself over the rail. My name is Kevin Hines, and this is my story. And I think to do this story any real justice, we must go back to the very beginning. The day I was born, August 30th, 1981, in the great city of San Francisco in this beautiful state. I was born to biological parents, as I am adopted, biological parents, Marcia Silvera and Martino Federales. Marcia and Martino, they had two things going for them. They had their immeasurable love for one another, and they had, in my humble opinion, two beautiful infant baby boys. One then named Giovanni, and one Jordash. I've been told that we looked exactly alike, except for the fact that he had long, blonde, curly locks, and of course I have bright, wavy auburn hair. They had those two things going for them, but they had a great many things going against them. Addicted to hardcore drugs and alcohol, but before that, diagnosed with manic depression, what we today call bipolar disorder, the same brain disease I would develop at the age of 17 and a half. But unlike me developing that brain disease at 17 and a half in 1998 with such great resources, unlike me, Martino and Marcia didn't have a chance. And I know they loved us. I know they wanted to keep us near them, except for the fact that on a regular basis, Martino and Marcia would leave Jordash and I in seedy crack motels to go score or do drugs. They would leave us screaming and crying, lying in our own filth for days, lying on motel beds atop concrete slab floors, the kind of places you paid for by the hour. Until one seedy motel clerk made what I call his most unseedy decision. He called the police. They came in, they barreled down the door, and they saw us there, sick, neglected, and they took us and placed us into Child Protective Services with the idea that we would be placed into foster care, a system that in San Francisco at that time was in shambles, letting kids age out to 18 into homelessness, which still happens, letting other kids be abused by their foster parents. You see, Jordash and I were supposed to be adopted together in brothers' arms, except because of that neglect, we both developed a severe strain of bronchitis, and my only full-blooded brother died. And people who aren't necessarily people in this room who understand, people often say to me, well, why does that matter? You were an infant. How did that affect you? We all know in this room that the first 3 to 9 months of any infant's life are the most crucial for their adaptation, coping skills, ability to connect. Yeah, I had none of that. Lost my brother, bounced around from home to home to home, having a new mom and dad every couple of weeks or days. I had nothing to adapt to, no one to hold on to, and so I developed, at a very young age, severe abandonment issues and a serious detachment disorder. Unlike Jordash, I got very lucky. I was in the home of Peter and Deborah Muller, two foster parents. Peter was an Army man, and he had to go be deployed in all places, Hawaii. And they had several foster children they were taking care of, and they had to, in essence, get rid of them. And one fateful day, a woman named Deborah Joan Hines walked into their door. Now, she was looking for a little girl to adopt with the young girl she'd already taken in. That's what was her plan. And she walked in their door, and on the carpeted floor before her was not a little girl. It was a little tiny Giovanni. She saw me, Giovanni, and with my then wavy auburn hair, and that was the moment she fell in love. And she went home to Patrick, Kevin Hines, and he said, we're going to do this. And they took me in. And when they took me in, I was violently ill every single day. It was taxing. It broke Debbie down. Every single day, violently ill. They took me to doctor after doctor after doctor. The only answer the doctors would give them, it was crystal clear, and it was the same wherever they went. There is absolutely nothing physically wrong with this child. It is all emotional. 9 months of age. That's where my life began. And one fateful day, Debbie looked down at me in the crib and she said, "Kid, I don't know if I can do this any longer. I'm going to have to take you back." This is in her journal. This really happened. "I'm going to have to take you back. I can't do this anymore. You need to know that we're not going anywhere. You're staying here. You're safe." And somehow that message came clear into my infant brain. And as my mother describes it in her journal, the next day things changed. There it is. I grew up in this beautiful home, privileged home, given every amenity life could offer. My father, Patrick Kevin Hines, affluent banker at the time, private banker in San Francisco. And he's the kind of guy, he worked for every penny he ever earned because back when he was a kid, he was in the gutter. And then there's my mom, Debbie, who was a nurse, 35-year nurse in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, working to help save lives every day. And as I grew older, I thought to myself, well, you know what, I could grow up, I'll be like my dad, I'll be a banker. I could be like my mom, I could be a nurse. Heck, I can do anything I set my little heart to, except for the fact that at 17 and a half, like a Mack truck barreling down the road at 75 miles an hour, it hit me. Boom. Extreme paranoia. Like it was out of nowhere. What did this mean? It meant that everywhere I went, everyone I saw, everything I did made me paranoid. I believe people in general, out to get me, trying to hurt me. Ultimately, I knew they were trying to kill me. For example, I thought the United States Postal Service workers, USPS, the white truck with the eagle on the side, every time I saw one of those trucks, I dropped everything in my arms and I ran in the opposite direction until I deemed the threat to be gone, until I decided that they weren't following me anymore and trying to kill me with machetes and machine guns. I would end up in neighborhoods I didn't recognize and I have to get home somehow. From the extreme paranoia came the hallucinations, both auditory and visual. And there's a lot of work going on in what hallucinations really are. We know that. But I'll tell you how I experience them. I experience death himself hovering through my window night after night, reaching out his bony hand, staff in blade in the other, looking upon me with his fiery eyes and looking at me and saying, "Come home with me." Other times I would look above to my ceiling would open up before me and pterodactyls would be above. These are the things I dealt with on a regular basis, but not just these. From the paranoia to the hallucinations to the manic highs. Euphoric highs caused by bipolar disorder, not caused by recreational drug use, because I never tried that. I didn't want to go my biological parents' route, but caused by my brain's imbalance of chemicals, caused by the most powerful organ in our body. This mania would lead me to do things that were absolutely ridiculous. For example, I would canvass my neighborhood all day long with my dad's old suits and ties that surely didn't fit him, and they definitely didn't fit me. I would canvass my neighborhood. I would take a clipboard and a notebook. I would knock on every single door. When the door was opened, I would look the people in the eye, and I would say, "I would like to secure your vote, please," 17 and a half. My neighbors would look at me and say, "Kev, yeah, vote for what?" And I would clap my feet together, and I would say, "The presidency of these United States of America," 17 and a half. Yeah. I don't know what happened that year, but a couple things. Clinton beat me. And I was told later I didn't even make it on the ballot, but during these manic highs, these delusions of grandeur, if I wasn't canvassing for campaign rights, I was sitting in a chair in front of my house, my father's house. My parents had divorced by that time. I was sitting in a chair in my father's house from 8 a.m. when he left until 5 or 6 when he returned. And I was waiting for my buddy Steve, of course. You guys know Steve, Vince Spielberg. Yeah, I got it in my head after watching one of his great movies that I was going to sit there and he was going to come in like a town car, and he was going to come and show up, maybe a limousine. And he was going to show up. He was going to have a contract and pen in hand. And he was going to look at me and he was going to say, "Kevin Hines, I want to secure you as the next lead in my future major motion picture. Get in the car." And then my dad showed up, ruined everything. Well, my father would show up, and he would say, "Hey, Kev, what are you doing?" Well, if you know my dad, he would say, "Kev, what the hell are you doing?" It's a mantra of his. It's not. That's real. And he would do that, and he would say, "Are you okay? How long have you been waiting here?" "All day." "What are you waiting for?" "My friend Steve." "Okay, Kevin." And when I said who the Steve was, he would say, Kevin, do I need to take you to a hospital? And you know what? He probably should have. And those are the kinds of things that occurred every day. But from the paranoia to the hallucinations to the mania came, of course, when you go up, you must come down. And I would come crashing down every week into a pit of psychosis and depression that I could not dig myself out of with a backhoe. Such dark times, such self-loathing, such inner voice hatred. When my father was in his room working, studying, reading, writing, I was in the bathroom, peering in the mirror, loathing every fiber of my being. I was hearing 3 to 4 people in my head at any given time, and I was talking out loud to all of them. They hated me, each and every one of them. They wanted me gone from this world. So from 17 and a half to about 19 years of age, I'm battling this up and down, up and down. Now, I'm taking medication here and there, and sometimes not at all. I'm taking some medication while binge drinking into blackout on the weekends with my friends, something that could have killed me. My coping skills were awful. But somehow I was able to pretend to my family that I was okay. Somehow I was able to enter my psyche and lie through my teeth. Doing good, doc. Following that treatment plan you sent me. I've got it covered. Okay, hour's up, see ya. And I would go about my regular rigmarole. At 19 years of age, in September, it got to be too much of a burden on my soul. It was breaking my back, this depression. In September, late September, I would cycle from mania to depression in a week. When I came down, I hit rock bottom. My brain told me I had to die, but you better believe I was desperately trying to stay alive. On September 24th of the year 2000, I went in my room. I paced for hours. I hadn't slept in 14 days, but 2 hours. We all know in this room that if you don't get proper amounts of sleep, you can have psychosis just for that reason. Add that to bipolar disorder, you bet I was in trouble. I sat down, I pulled out a notebook from my workbooks. I opened it to a page, and I began to write my suicide note. I wrote it to my family, my friends, and my girlfriend at the time. I told them how much I love them. I told them the things they were doing wrong in my life, and I asked for their forgiveness. My father was in his room on the phone with my psychiatrist, begging that doctor for help. Now I want to make this clear and very clear to you all. This part of the story is not indicative to clinicians in the field because they have helped me and guided me to safety and they have saved my life on more than one occasion. But this particular doctor happened to turn out to be on methamphetamines the entire time he treated me and his other patients. He had a deep burden on his own soul and he was struggling. At that time I was on 14 medications once. And other doctors I've seen later have believed that it may have been toxifying in my brain, making me worse. My father reached out to him saying, my son's acting erratically. I don't know what to do. And the doctor said to him in these words, Pat, it's just another episode. Come out of it in a couple of days. Don't worry about a thing. My father's a banker, not a psychologist. He took those words. He listened to them. At 7 in the morning on the 25th, my father entered my room. He looked upon me. He said, Kevin, I'm very worried about you and I don't know what to do. Why don't you come to work with me today? There it was. My opening, my opportunity to tell my father everything that was going on in my brain. But I was too ashamed. I was too fearful that they would put me in a white-walled hospital, in a straitjacket, strapped down to a gurney for the rest of my life, and I was fearful of that, and so I said nothing. My father kept going for 15 minutes, trying to convince me to hang out with him that day. Finally, I told my dad the unthinkable. I said, Dad, I have a math test today. It's very important. Just if you don't know me, I'm not a mathematician. And more than that, I hate math with a passion. Wouldn't take a math test if you paid me. But my father, of course he didn't see that, and that's not his fault. Finally, he gave up. He said, okay, Kevin, I will take you to City College if you take the bus home at 6 o'clock. We'll meet at home. Looking forward to having dinner with you tonight. Perfect, Dad. I knowing full well that I was going to go to that 4-foot rail, and I was going to throw my body overboard. So my father, we got in the car. We drove to City College, a kiddie corner on the side of City College, San Francisco. And as I looked at my father, knowing what I was going to do, I felt not for what he would feel. I felt only pain, the common denominator in those who attempt and die by suicide with mental struggles, that epic battle with emotional and mental pain you cannot get away from. That tunnel vision that is closed off at the end and it is pitch black. My dad looked at me and he said one of his other mantras, Kevin, I love you. Be careful. He says it till today. I said, I love you too, Dad. I kissed my dad on the cheek as I had done since I was about yay high. For those of you over here, yay high. As he had done to his father and his father to his father, I kiss my dad on the cheek today, and I often feel like we're part of some weird Robert De Niro mafia movie. I told my dad I loved him. I stepped out of the car with my right foot, and even though I knew I had to die that day, a tear rolled down my right cheek off my chin, and it landed on my right shoe. I see that moment every time I talk about it. It's embedded in my brain. I stepped out of the car, I watched him drive away, and I thought that was the last time anybody I love will ever see me, and the last time I will see anybody I love. And I was okay with that. I walked on to City College campus. I went into the counselor's department. I asked for the most readily available counselor, and I told her to drop me 9.5 of my 12.5 units I was taking. Drop them all. With a few clicks of the button, it was done. And there was also gone my medical coverage. That counselor's mistake, she didn't ask one question. Not why, what, who, when, or how. She just dropped the classes and said, you're on your way. I didn't know that all my medical coverage would disappear with those few clicks of those buttons. And that my father, if I survived, which I did, would bear the burden and almost go bankrupt. I walked into my last class. It was my English class, and some people say, why English, Kevin? And it wasn't, because I wrote a silly book. No, I'm not a literary master. No, not at all. The teacher was hot. Why we all go to school. I signed my note in my notebook. I left that class. I got on a bus. I eventually ended up on the bus that would go out to the Golden Gate Bridge. As I sat in the middle row, in the very back seat, crying my eyes out, begging myself at this point to get off the bus, to call someone for help, to reach out, but I just couldn't do it. I sat on the bus in the very back row crying like a baby. People were staring at me, wondering, what is wrong with that guy? And therein lies the problem. I know you're in the field, but when you see someone in active emotional and mental pain, do not walk by them. I don't care if you don't know them from Adam. When I see someone in that state, I walk up to them and I ask them these questions. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Can I help you? Some of them want to slap me like, get away from me, dude. But I've had experiences, vivid, emotional experiences where people need help. And I sit down with them and we guide that person to safety. The bus got to the bridge parking lot. I deboarded the bus after the bus driver told me to get off. I was the last person off the bus. Everyone was on that bridge from that bus to see the beautiful Golden Gate. I walked out to that bridge, feet heavy, heart palpitating, eyes red with tears. After 40 minutes, you guys all know what happened next. After almost drowning in those waters below the bridge, I resurfaced without the use of my legs. I had shattered my T12, L1, and L2 lower vertebrae into shards like glass. My legs were immobile. Something miraculous happened at that point, a couple of things. Something brushed by my legs, something slimy. And I really thought, you gotta be kidding. I didn't die off that silly bridge, and now a shark is going to devour me? That was not the plan. And I'm trying to punch this thing with my right arm, which is wrenched so it hurts, and it won't go away. As a matter of fact, it just kept circling beneath me. And eventually, my friends, I laid atop the water, bobbing up and down, but not wading in it. And this thing would not go away from beneath me. Until and when the Coast Guard boat was heard behind me. Two beautiful hoisted me onto a flatboard and saved me from drowning. Not one person in this room is here for ourselves. We are here for one another. We are, no matter what we believe in, we are our brothers and sisters' keepers, and we must hold dear to that. I am so glad to be alive. And no matter how much pain I'm in the chronic suicidality that I have, I will never attempt to take my life again, because I know the wake of destruction it causes those in my path. No matter how depressed I get, no matter how bad it turns, I will never attempt again. And every day of my life, until I die of natural causes, okay, every day of my life I will work in this field trying to help others. Ladies and gentlemen, remember this. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why they call it the present. I look to you now, and I say, let us always and forever cherish today and every single day. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much. Thank you.
What you're about to see is what I call the art of wellness, a 10-step guide to better brain, mind, behavior, mental, physical, spiritual health, and well-being. Check it out. A lot of people have been asking me, what do I do to stay mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy and well while living with an extreme form of bipolar disorder? Well, let's get right into it. What's cracking, Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and this is another round of Ask Kev, where you, from the interwebs of the world, across all social media platforms, ask me questions and I answer them to the best of my ability. I have been getting question after question about what is my general routine to stay stable. But people have been asking me all over social media, Kevin, how do you stay mentally stable while living with such a severe form of bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features? Well, I'll tell you first of all, it's not easy. I work tirelessly for my better brain health. And during COVID, it's been even harder. But let me break down in this video the 10 steps I utilize to stay tip-top to the best of my ability. Let's get right into it. Number 1, therapy. Therapy is a key go-to for me. Now, I recognize that not everybody can access therapy. Not everyone can afford therapy. But therapy means what it means to you in your particular situation and your life's path. If you go ahead and you educate yourself as to music therapy and art therapy, something you can get books on and teach yourself, meditation therapy, you can be better mentally well. So therapy is different for every person. For me personally, I utilize talk therapy, art therapy, music therapy, blue wave light box technology therapy, and breathing therapy or breathwork therapy. Talk therapy is when you talk to a therapist. Now because of COVID, it's virtual. It's teletherapy rather, and I do that with my teletherapist on a regular basis. I have her on my Zoom calls or on my FaceTime or on Facebook phone call even. That's right, my therapist answers Facebook phone calls. And so I make sure I can see her, she can see me, the expression on my face, my demeanor, my overall well-being, she can tell right away because we worked together for so long. Let's talk about music therapy. Music therapy is amazing. It helps me sleep at night. I listen to music therapy 20 minutes before I go to bed. I used to be an insomniac. This helped change my life. Art therapy. Growing up, I sketched as a kid all my life. I sketched, I drew, mostly superheroes, some real life stuff, some backgrounds, some landscapes, but I really fell in love with it. And when I am feeling in a bad place, I get down, I get a sketch pad out, and I put pen or pencil to paper, and I get to work, and it makes me feel better because it's a release of pain. Now, when I'm doing breathwork therapy, that's resonance breathing. I'm inhaling 4 seconds through my nose, holding for 4 seconds, then exhaling 8 seconds through my lips, like pursed lips, like a whistle, but no sound. I do that 30 times in the morning before I do anything else, before I check my social medias, before I even turn on my phone, before I do anything. I am breathing and getting my mind and body to a calm so I can just cool off and know that this next day is beginning. I do breath work in the morning, in the afternoon before lunch, and right before dinner. I do them because it helps me stay to a cool, collected, and calm place. Resonance breathing does a few things. It lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. Don't do it if you already have low blood pressure. That's a key thing you must know. Disclaimer. It lowers your blood sugar. Yes, breath therapy lowers your blood sugar. So if you're tackling that right now and you're dealing with blood sugar issues, breathing can be a key way to help you balance your life. It also quells an adrenaline rush, panic attack, and anxiety attack. I do all of these things with breath therapy, and it's amazing. So let's go. We got therapy. That's the first step in my 10-step plan. Let's talk about the 3 E's right there. 3 E's. Education, exercise, and eating healthily, or proper nutrition rather. Eating proper nutrition is so crucial to your better brain health. Now, I will be blatantly honest with you. COVID hit me hard. I was put on a new medication. It decreased all the leptin in my body, making me feel ravenously hungry all the time. And I have gained quite a bit of weight during COVID, but as they say, who hasn't? I'm working it off right now. I'm working really, really hard to stabilize. You saw me sit down with my hoodie on, the sweat on my brow. I just got done with my 3rd workout of the day. And you might think, well, Kevin, that's excessive, but don't worry about it. It's not. I did a 23-minute light exercise this morning on the upper body. I did a 23-minute lower body exercise this afternoon. And I did a 20-minute full body exercise, 23-minute full body exercise this evening. I do that all hours before I go to sleep so I get a great night's sleep. It really helps me out. Triple workout day just because I felt like it and I needed it today. It really helped me out. Helped me feel more mentally stable. Sanity over vanity. So yeah, I've gained some weight, but I'm getting back into shape and I'm getting back on track with my physical routine. But let's get back into the program. Therapy. education, exercise, eating healthily. I exercise every day and have done so for the last 4 weeks. It's been something that has really kept me stable and feeling good and feeling energized and feeling mentally conscious and aware. I feel like I can get through the day a lot better when I exercise first thing in the morning and then again in the afternoon pre-lunch and then again in the evening pre-dinner. It really is something that helps shape my day. And let's talk about why. 23 minutes of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better mood. And if you're taking care of your mood, you're taking care of your brain health, your brain well-being. 23 minutes, 12 hours of better mood. That's the category. But 23 minutes twice a day, 24 hours of better mood, 3 times a day, you do the math. So that's exercise. Let's talk about eating healthily. Now, during these COVID months, I went a little haywire and I was eating myself out of house and home with everything I could find and not necessarily the most healthy things, but I'm back on track with a good, clean, healthy diet. And let's be clear, healthy is different for different people, and I want to be crystal clear that I'm eating foods that are non-inflammatory, once again, that don't inflame my system, that don't cause me puffiness in my face and bloat around the gut. Obviously, you can see that some of the remnants of that is still going on, but I'm working that out right now. So it's been really good getting back on a clean, nutritious diet. Next to that, let's talk about education. This is one of my favorites. Educating yourself and your family member about what you're going through. So I read every single bit of information I can find on bipolar disorder as soon as it comes out. Every bit of information on bipolar disorder that I can find through a Google alert on bipolar disorder, suicide prevention, mental health and well-being, wellness, I read it all, I devour it whole, and I take it, and if it's reputable and proven, I add it into my routine. That's where the music therapy came in, and the art therapy came in, and the resonance breathing therapy came in, and even the blue wave light box technology therapy came in. All those things came from me reading research papers and studies and things like that, and articles and the like, and blogs about how to stabilize mentally. Just educate yourself as much as you can, especially if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness. So next to that, educating your family, your friends, your confidants, your colleagues about what you're going through. How can they be aware of what you're dealing with if you don't help them understand it first? So instead of being angry at people that don't get you, maybe give them a book like Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder by Julie A. Fast, or giving them a book like Bipolar for Dummies by Candida Fink and Joe Cranack. I got to be in their 3rd edition of that book, and I was so thankful to do so. So definitely check that book out if you have bipolar disorder. I'm a Catholic. I have a Bible, but Bipolar for Dummies is my 2nd Bible. I use it every day. It helps me stay stable. It helps me to understand myself and my inner turmoils and how my inner struggles and how I can defeat them one day at a time. Don't let your pain defeat you. Let it build you brick by brick from the ground up. Succeed beyond the pain. Thrive in spite of, despite of the pain. You can do this. I believe in you. Those are the 3 E's. Exercise, eating healthy, education. So therapy, exercise, eating healthy, education. That's 4. Let's talk about 5. Coping strategies and mechanisms. Finding things in your life and your existence that help you help yourself heal. So things like grounding techniques and finding tools and really hobbies for yourself that are positive. Reduction of the negative aspects of your life, reducing the negative people in your life. Those are all coping strategies you can utilize. So that's therapy, education, exercise, eating healthy, coping mechanisms and strategies. Let's talk about refraining from drugs and alcohol. I don't use drugs. I don't drink any alcohol. I used to binge drink on the weekends until blackout. I did it a handful of times. I didn't do it every weekend, but I did it a handful of times. I got alcohol poisoning, and at 21 years of age, I got so drunk and I embarrassed myself so bad that I never touched alcohol again. I have not had alcohol since my 21st birthday. I'm very proud of that. I quit cold turkey. It was very hard. I don't recommend that way to do it for anybody, but drugs and alcohol, I know they're not easy to shake. I know substance use disorder is very real. I know that both my biological parents died of mental illness, but they died of drugs and alcohol as I'm adopted. And I know that people are torn up inside and they want to get healthy and they want to get help, but they're struggling with their addictions. I wish you all the best. I'm sending out my love, my good vibes to you. Please work tirelessly to defeat your addiction. You can do this. I believe in you. I know you got this. My birth parents sadly didn't make it. Let that be a lesson to you. You can survive the pain, get through it, and you can reduce the drugs and alcohol in your system to nil, and you can find programs and treatments that help you to defeat your addiction. I believe in you. So therapy, education, exercise, eating healthily, coping mechanisms and strategies, refraining from drugs and alcohol. That's 6 of the 10 steps. Let's get into it. Advocacy. Advocating for yourself and advocating for public policy or legislative advocacy. Self-advocacy looks like being honest about your pain, telling your truth to others, telling your therapist the truth instead of lying. You can't get forward in therapy unless you tell the truth. Lying in therapy only gets you down a dark path. So being honest in therapy is key of any kind. Advocating for yourself in the sense that if medications you happen to be put on are making you feel uneasy, tell the truth about that so you can get to different meds. Meds don't work well for everyone. I take meds that work well for me. I'm lucky that I found those meds. I'm lucky that they work well. I'm lucky I got to a better place because of them. But that's just a piece of the puzzle. This entire 10-step program is really everything that works together at the same time. Advocating for myself in therapy sessions, with doctors. I've had so many primary care physicians and physical doctors of all kinds tell me that I'm psychosomatic. And if you don't know what that means, it means they're blaming my fear of physical illness on my mental state. And they're saying that I'm basically fictitiously making up in my head. I remember vividly when I went into a pulmonary specialist's office and told him I was having a really hard time breathing, he told the doctor next door that I was psychosomatic and that it was all in my head. Turned out that I had some issues with my lungs that were very serious and he didn't even take it seriously. So you have to deal with these things and that shame and that stigma and that discrimination and that marginalization because you have a diagnosis of mental illness. It really sucks. I've had many of those situations occur actually. I was once having a grand mal seizure and they said it was psychosomatic, which it wasn't. It was a devastating seizure that caused a great deal of pain to my system. Nonetheless, we move forward. So that's self-advocacy. Let's talk about legislative advocacy. Let me give you a prime example of legislative advocacy. My father, after the film The Bridge came out, if you haven't seen the film The Bridge by Eric Steele, check that out. The Bridge is about the deaths on the Golden Gate Bridge in 2006. And Eric Steele made this film about why there's no rail up on the bridge right now and why it hasn't happened. My father was so inspired by this, he founded the Bridge Rail Foundation with Dave Hull and Paul Muller. Dave Hull lost his daughter to the Golden Gate Bridge tragically. Dave, thank you for being such a servant to this country and the world and doing the work you do. And Paul Muller, thank you for your efforts and your hard work in changing the situation and making sure that we never stop fighting for this net to be raised at the Golden Gate Bridge. And thank you to my dad, Pat Hines, for pushing forth the fight. And thank you to Alexis Durat St. James for being the original funder for the Bridge Rail Foundation. You are an amazing human being and a gift to this world. And so the Bridge Rail Foundation fought for the better part of 14 to 16 years, including myself doing this work in legislative advocacy to raise the net at the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, guess what? It's going up right now. It's being built and it will be done by 2023. And as of 2023, not one more beautiful soul will ever again be lost to the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention around the world. It's amazing. So excited. That's legislative advocacy. That's where you get a small group of like-minded people that make great change and can change the world. Let's move on. So we've got therapy, education, exercise, eating healthfully, coping strategies and mechanisms. We've got refraining from drugs and alcohol. We've got advocacy. The next step I want to tell you about is meditation. Now, we've all heard that meditation can benefit us and help keep us more mentally stable. Meditation is so crucial for the body to live in a present state of mind. Being here with you right now is the only place I want to be. I'm with you, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you through this lens, and it's like I can see into your soul. And I know some of you are going through a hard time. I want you to find meditation, the kind that works for you. Do your research. Transcendental meditation is great. There's a great many meditations that can work for you. I find that tm.org is one of the best resources for meditation that works for a lot of people around the world. I met Bob Roth, one of the founding members of Transcendental Meditation, a genius in his own right. He's a great man, a man I call friend, and I find that meditation helps you recognize your true value by recognizing your inner peace and finding a way to stay calm in the face of all this manic world that we live in. This world is filled with mania. It's filled with disruption. It's filled with too many influences, and it's filled, frankly, with too much stimulation. And sometimes you need to bring that all to a calm. And that's where that resonance breathing comes into play with the meditation alongside it. The Calm app is a wonderful app for meditation, so check that out. Not a sponsored post, by the way. Just love that app. And Headspace as well. Two great apps for meditation. I want to give you guys those resources because they're out there and they're meant to help you. And if you need someone to talk to and you're able to afford a therapist, BetterHelp is a great place for talk therapy. So is Talkspace. We don't want to discriminate. We want to collaborate, not compete. Let's let everything help everybody. How about that? So meditation. Let's talk about medication. That's my next step. Medication. Medication, as I said earlier, is not for everybody. It works really well for me, but it took me a long time to find the right kind for me. And when I say a long time, I mean one hell of a long time. It took me a long time to find the right meds for me, but I did, and I have, and I feel so much better with them now. The medication I take with 100% accuracy each and every day without fail, and I take it at the same time every day without fail. because it helps stabilize my system and keep me safe from myself when or if I become suicidal. I can take a PRN to make me calm down. All these things are very helpful. PRN is like a rapid release medication that helps you in the moment of a panic attack or a stress attack or even a suicidal state of mind. So next to that, let's get right into step 10, the final step of the 10-step plan, the art of wellness. It's called the plan, your mental health emergency plan. Everybody has mental health, and thus everybody has to take care of it. And if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice. So get right to it and get to work and build your plan. Your plan is basically, for me, it was a binder back in the day. A binder I handed to my 5 closest family members and friends, and they became my personal peer protectors, my personal protectors, as I call them. And they were the people that had my plan. They knew my doctor's information. They had a release form signed. HIPAA laws were usurped, meaning that they could talk to my doctor and ask them anything about my treatment, and my doctor had to tell them everything about my treatment to make sure I was physically safe. If I couldn't keep myself safe, they could keep me safe through the plan. They had my doctor's name, number, email, address, everything, and vice versa. And anytime I wasn't able to take care of myself, then these people came forward, and guided me to a safe place. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a quick version of The Art of Wellness, my 10-step guide to better brain health. I wanted to help you find hope. I wanted to help you find healing. And I wanted to help you be well and be here tomorrow and every single day after that. Be well, be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, empathetic, and non-judgmental to every single person you come into contact with, no matter their behavior toward you, because you never know what they're going through. You never know what they've been through. And be good to yourself. You belong here. You deserve this life until your natural end. Suicide is never the solution to your problem. It is the problem. I believe in you. This life is the greatest gift we've ever been given or will ever be given. Guys, be well and be here tomorrow.
But really, things did start to change right around that time. I started to get really sick. When you first had noticed that I was unhinged, unwell, unkept, what was your initial reaction? What did the teachers think, and how did you tackle that?
So at first we thought it was tied to the fact that your parents were going through a divorce. And as a child who was adopted, and going through a divorce just opens a whole new set of wounds that we were just thinking, wow, this is going to be tough, because you were so close to both your parents and you had your siblings, and going through that type of trauma, because it wasn't a friendly divorce.
No.
And so at first we thought that the pain that you were feeling from that divorce, which was probably true, was causing some anger, and you were acting out on that anger. And so I know as a team we talked about it, and we said, hey, we got to be there for Kevin. Everybody, pat his back every day, check in on him, and be there for your brother. And over time it became more and more of a challenge, and you also started getting involved with drama at that same point. And so at first there was a confusion for us as we're looking at it, not knowing that there was a mental illness that was brewing. And for us, we're looking at it as he's angry, and now he's on stage as an actor. And we started seeing that anger and that outgoing behavior in the school. And I specifically remember us meeting in the cafeteria, and I was part of a presentation, and you were in the back right-hand corner, like by the band room door. And I remember you got up first, real angry, and just started speaking out. And this presentation was just informational, and you turned it into a confrontation. And then as you were having that confrontation, you turned into that character, the Rock, and the kids were just laughing at you.
Which I would do every day, and
right.
I would make fun of kids, and I would say, it doesn't matter what your name is, and why don't you drink a nice tall glass of shut up juice. And I was really rude to a lot of people with that persona, with that character.
Yeah, and I remember I pulled you aside in the hallway, and I'm like, Kevin, are you on drugs or something?
You weren't the only one that thought that.
Yeah.
We talked about that, but
yeah.
Father Tim definitely thought I was on drugs, and I didn't even know what was wrong with me.
Right.
I didn't know why I was so jacked up and hyper and hypomanic and manic. I didn't know what those terms meant back then.
Right.
And then I got diagnosed, and we learned together almost what was going on. And the best part about Reardon was you had my back, and you took care of me. Even in my darkest hour, you supported me. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah, and that's where, I remember Mr. Procasio telling me that what your diagnosis was. And he explained it to me, because at that point I hadn't started my master's in counseling yet. And so for me it was eye-opening, because I didn't know about this, and realized later on that it's very common at 16 with puberty that something like this comes out, and a personality changes radically. Because you went from being the sweetest, most polite, dedicated, motivated kid to this defiant, angry
asshole.
Kind of an asshole.
I was a dick to a lot of people.
A little bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
And
arrogant even.
Yeah.
It was arrogance that was involved. It was ego.
So that was tough. I remember us having some talks, and then after your diagnosis I was relieved, but I didn't realize the medication regime that you were facing was going to be such a challenge. And I guess at first they have to find out what the right dosages are. And that medication was changing your personality in another way. And you were depressed. We didn't know which Kevin would show up.
I was enraged.
Yeah.
I hated that people were labeling me this disease that I didn't want to have. But both my biological parents had the same diagnosis, manic depression. So I just recently learned through meeting my birth mother's family that my birth mom was triply diagnosed with schizophrenia, manic depression, and multiple personality disorder. So it's been a very interesting time in learning about my heritage and my genetic past that ties absolutely into what happened in high school with you.
It was disturbing. It was really a difficult challenge, because we loved Kevin, and to see him going through all this, and I was worried about him. Like what's going to happen after high school? Because we invested a lot of time as a team protecting him. We wanted him to be part of the team. He got to the point where he couldn't physically wrestle anymore. He just would freeze up. He had no mobility. And so we saw this physical deterioration, where in wrestling we have challenge matches where I don't pick the lineup. You challenge someone, whoever wins gets that weight class. Sometimes people change weight classes, and then Kevin lost his spot, and then he lost to another kid that he should have never lost to, and so we just saw this physical deterioration, and his ability to compete was gone. And we were hoping that it would come back, not because we needed him on the team as much as for him to feel good about himself, because we knew winning was a confidence booster for him. He's very competitive and passionate, but we took him to all the matches with us, and to the point where at a Bellarmine dual meet he just lost control. He was screaming off the top of his lungs, and he ran up to the edge of the mat, and it was kind of a spectacle where we had to actually stop the whole wrestling match, which never really happens. But it was obvious to the referee that there was something wrong with Kevin. I had to physically grab him by the hand, pull him outside into the lobby, walk him around, and get his composure back. I assigned a couple of students to stay with him the rest of the match. The coach from Bellarmine came over and talked to me and said, "Hey, I know someone else that's bipolar." Like, he just saw it. And he's like, "It's tough, and hopefully over some time the medication will make things better for him." It's like, it's a shame. And he knew who he was as a good wrestler, and this was the number one team in the area at the time. So Kevin was there, and so his pain and his suffering was very evident for all of us, and frightening. My feelings about it was tough, because I cared about the kid. It made me feel sad, definitely, and afraid. I was very much afraid for him. I didn't see how he was going to be able to function at the level he was at. Where here goes this kid that you go, the world is his oyster. He can do whatever he wants. This guy has intelligence, physical abilities, acting abilities. I could have seen him going into business, graduating from college, doing really well in life. And now that all seemed impossible. Is he even going to be able to live away from his family, let alone take care of himself and be successful? So there there was a lot of fear and wonder. So yeah, there was a lot of nights where I lost sleep thinking about him, and he was just, you know, a person that we did see some improvement before going into graduation. So it seemed like the hope came and became higher as he progressed through school.
Ryan got grumpier as time went on. He spent more time in his room. I didn't notice that sign. I missed it. I thought I checked in on him. I did every day. How you doing? I'm fine. Okay, I guess you're fine. I didn't realize that fine meant I'm not fine. But how many times do we talk to our teens and say, yeah, I'm fine? They chose I'm fine for a reason.
It's hard sometimes, you know, it's hard to know what the balance is. With my kids sometimes, I make a smaller deal out of things that my wife makes a big deal about, right?
Is there like a rule of thumb or draw the line?
Well, I can't draw the line for you, right? I wish I could, because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert. I'm a guy who lost his kid, who spent the last year and a half trying to figure out why. Those of us with teenagers, and those of us who've seen teenagers a lot, how do you talk to them? Well, I can tell you what they want and what they don't want. What they don't want is you to burst into their room when they're watching some video on YouTube and say, we need to talk. That's the wrong time to talk to them. That's when they say, I'm fine, leave me alone. But they all have that time when they'll talk to you. Maybe it's driving in the car when you take them to school, when they're walking the dog. I can tell you though, it's also inconvenient. Because I know all the times that Ryan came up to my office because I worked from home and said, hey Dad, can we talk? And I said, you know, dude, I just on a call, 30 minutes, I'll be right there. And how many of you have done that? I don't know which one of those times, if any of those times, was the time Ryan wanted to come up and tell me how he was really feeling. It was my wife's birthday, so her and I headed down to Mexico on the 20th of March. We got to Mexico, and I'll always remember this because the night of the 21st, we were having dinner. And our phones went off at the exact same time as 11:03, and we had a text. But it was Ryan, basically saying, I love you, and then he said goodbye. I freaked out. My wife's screaming. I got on the phone, I called my mother-in-law who was looking after the kids. I'm like, find Ryan. I'm yelling at her, and Kim's yelling at Kyle, and she's running around the house, and she finds him. He took his own life. I've never felt more helpless in my entire life. All I wanted to do was be there and save him. And I couldn't.
What would you tell people who would tell you it's not your fault?
That I'm responsible. There's things that if I had it done differently, Ryan would still be here. I wouldn't be standing in front of all you guys saying, please learn from what I didn't do right. And I wanted to see if there's like something I could find, a letter or a notebook or something. And I start going through drawers. And I open it up and it's empty, except for 2 sticky notes. I pulled out, one said, my usernames and passwords. And the other one said, tell my story. Tell what happened from your eyes so that parents are looking at their kids differently. And I traveled around the Pacific Northwest in California, talking to a whole bunch of parents and a whole bunch of kids, and I researched the heck out of all this. The stats are staggering. So for me, I'm going, why?
What is it you think that you would change going back?
When I look back at Ryan, I showed up this way. I'm a CEO, coach, Ironman, I'm a black belt, I'm an author. If there's a problem, I fix it. My kids never saw me cry. As far as they know, I never did. I've failed at 13 businesses. I've almost been bankrupt 3 times. My wife and kids never knew. I protected them from reality. At least I thought I was protecting them. I thought that's the way I should be a dad. And then what did my 14-year-old son do? He looked at me and said,
this is how a real man fights.
That's the way a man and a father is supposed to be. And so he showed up that way. Ryan was the class clown. Ryan talked all the time. Ryan came home from dinner, told great stories about how things happened, about his bully, and how he verbally trounced his bully and thought it was funny as heck. He never shared the fact that he had any problems. He had lots of them. Because he thought that that's how he's supposed to show up. And I regret that.
What would you teach fathers to basically help them talk with their kids?
First thing you do is you listen. You listen to how they feel and make sure they know that you care. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on at school? Have you ever felt sad? Have you ever felt mad? Have you ever felt anxious? And you understand that how they feel is how they feel. You can't fix how they feel. And this is what we as dads do. We fix stuff. How many times has your wife said to you, I don't want you to fix my problem, I just want you to listen to me? That's hard for dads to do because we want to protect our kids. When we go into overprotection mode, when we protect them every time they fall, so they can't fall, then what do they believe when they become 14, 15, 16, 17? They believe there's nothing wrong that's ever going to happen. We create kids that do not have any resilience in their lives. I want to do a little exercise with you. Close your eyes for a second. I want you to think back to when you were 12, 13 years of age. And I want you to put up your hands if you were ever bullied. Put up your hands if you ever felt like you weren't happy with your life. If you ever felt like you weren't as cool as the other kids. Leave your hands up for a second and open your eyes. All right, now put your hands down. Put up your hands if you ever thought that you would go ahead and share those deep, dark, painful moments with your kids. Yeah, I didn't, because I was like you. But I wish someone took the time to talk to me and tell me I might need to change. Had I been more vulnerable with my own kids, to share with them, like, yeah, you know what, I was bullied, and I was bullied. I didn't think I had a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of friends. I never shared any of that with my kids.
If you could say one thing to Ryan, what would it be?
If I could say one thing to Ryan, I'd say I'm sorry. I'd say I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I failed you as a dad. I'm sorry. I'm a lot more open now with my kids. And you know what? I have a lot deeper conversations with my kids now than I ever had. All right, so what do we do now? Everything's only going to change if we change. The world's only going to change if we decide as parents that we're going to make it change. And we're going to make it change if we all decide to be that person that our kids want to come talk to, that our kids feel safe with. If we tell our stories and we start to have real emotional connections with our children, that's when the world starts changing. You can make a difference with your own family. I'm making a difference with the family I have left. I would love it if you all told your story.
I'll tell my story.
I'll tell my story.
Welcome back. All right, Kevin's throwing me here for a second. Okay, he had just texted in. Actually, Kevin had the opportunity to be in California, and he met with some workers that are working on the bridge project to save future lives. So it's pretty exciting for him to be out there. So he will be joining in a second by his phone. He's actually in the car, but you will not see his picture tonight or his Zoom version, but he will be joining us, and he's excited to do that. Again, we want to thank our sponsors for these videos that we've been able to have. We're in the 5th of 7 videos, and our sponsors are Maryland's Behavioral Health Administration, Midshore Behavioral Health, Anne Arundel County Health, Department of Health, Anne Arundel Mental Health Agency, and my agency Channel Marker. And just a quick reminder, if you want to ask questions, you can use the chat in the Q&A function. So I get the best job of the night and it's to introduce these speakers on the panel. Thanks for sticking with us for the live part of this. I know that that video is probably hard to watch. It's always hard to watch people's pain. We all have so much compassion for suicide loss survivors, family members, friends, loved ones, and it is hard to hear their stories, but there is a lot of healing through hearing those stories. And I'm going to introduce our panel tonight. I'm going to start with Kim Klump. Kim, wave, that's Kim. Kim, she moved, I'll give you her bio to my best ability here. Kim moved to the Lower Eastern Shore. She lives near one particular best beach in Maryland, right? So she moved to the Lower Eastern Shore in 1988, and she started working in environmental health for the county government. And she retired not so long ago in 2019. Kim lost her son, Jesse, to suicide in 2009. Jesse was a senior in high school and a very accomplished young man. He was a great athlete, student. And, you know, Kim was a fantastic mom to Jesse. And after she spent some time working through her grief, Kim decided she needed to take that pain and turn it around and help others. And she's a pretty impressive lady. She became a mentor through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, a group facilitator through them. And she's also a certified grief counselor now as of 2015. And she has a website, and I think we'll provide you guys with that. It's jessiespaddle.org. And there's a lot of resources on her website. And Kim currently runs her own nonprofit in honor of Jesse, and it's the Jesse Klump Memorial Fund for Jesse's Paddle. And that works to educate about suicide warning signs and to help those who are grieving the loved one from suicide. Kim, thank you so much for being here tonight. I told them we're so happy that they're willing to be vulnerable for us so that we can learn and know how to educate and how to, you know, help others ourselves. So thank you so much. It's been great meeting you, Kim. And then we have Mr. Greg Roos, and Greg comes to us from Southern Maryland. We're keeping things down here, right? The lower parts of Maryland on either sides of that river. And Greg is a retired Marine. He was in the Marine Corps and he served.
Hello.
Hey, Kev, we hear you.
Can you see me okay?
I can see you. I just fit to the whole group and said I wouldn't be able to see you, but we see you.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to finish introducing Greg and then I'm going to get to you so you can take a breath for a second.
All right, thank you.
All right. So Greg lives, like I said, he lives in Southern Maryland. He's a retired from the Marine Corps, and where he served for 30 years. Thank you for your service. And after the Marines, he worked in the defense industry until 2016. And he's a pretty accomplished man. He's a Naval Academy grad. We all love the Naval Academy here in Maryland. And he also went on to do the Naval Postgraduate School. I believe that's in California, right, Greg? And then, and if that wasn't enough, I guess he got a little bored and then he went back to school again, and he got his master's degree from Salisbury. That's one of my schools. And he got his master's in social work, where he is a licensed social worker. Now, Greg lost his son to suicide, Paul, in 2015. Greg, like Kim, is very much involved in advocacy, and he is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the Maryland chapter. He is the board chair for that. And thank you for that volunteer work as well. Greg is an active community volunteer. He focuses on suicide prevention education, advocacy, and coalition building. And you can check out their website, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, at afsp.org. We'll also provide you with that. Thank you, Greg, for being here with us as well.
Thank you.
And then finally, my friend Kevin Hines over there, who's coming from the car. Kevin's, you never know where he is. He's all over the place. Like, he's in Miami, he's in California, he's in Atlanta. He's got some good frequent flyer miles. So we're very fortunate enough to be able to partner with Kevin in this very, very important video series, 7 videos that we have done, and we're just completed the 5th one. And if you got to know a lot about Kevin from watching that video, but I will also add he's an international speaker. He literally is asked to speak all over this globe. He's been everywhere. He's an author. He's authored many books about his story. He's a filmmaker. He's an advocate for mental health and wellness, and he's pretty much a friend to every single person he meets. And as you can tell from watching the video, he has a very important story to share, and he's devoted his entire life to spreading his passionate message of hope, healing, and recovery. Kevin, can never thank you enough for what you've done to partner with us in Maryland and this project, and I'm going to turn it over to you. You got to take
Thank you
yourself
very
off.
much. Yep. Thank you very much, Kathy. And thanks to everyone on the panel, everyone involved today. Yeah, I think I first want to start off with a moment of silence for all of those that we have lost to suicide from lethal emotional pain, especially Kim and Greg. And I'm not just an attempt survivor off the Golden Gate Bridge, but I'm a lost survivor as well. I've lost 10 people I truly care about to suicide, some that I truly loved, and it's devastating every time it happens. 10 times is 10 times too many, and 1 time is 1 time too many. So I want to say that to Kim and to Greg, I absolutely feel your struggle and your pain. I wish you nothing but healing and recovery from what you've gone through. And I think I'd like to start with a very important question. I think that was asked in part of the comment section, but I think it's an important thing that we talk about right now. And I want to ask both Kim and Greg to respond to this in any order you choose. What do outside people who care about the individuals who lost someone to suicide do? How do they respond? How do they react? How do they talk to the loved one who lost someone to suicide? How do they, what are the right things to say? What are the wrong things to say? What is hurtful? What is helpful? And why does it matter to not just be quiet about it? To be open about it and open about talking. One of the things I find people tell me all around the world is that when they lose a loved one to suicide, nobody knows how to talk to them, and thus nobody brings it up. And it's as if the person who passed away didn't exist in the first place. So, Greg, why don't you start off if you can and try to tackle a bit of that question if you feel comfortable.
It is a great question, and thanks again for the opportunity. And this is something you really don't know until it happens, right? How are people going to talk to me and or not talk to me? And early on, you find out that people kind of polarize one way or the other. I mean, close family, close friends, or extended family, they'll engage and they'll be there. Those folks that don't know, just because it's so awkward, they may distance themselves and isolate. So I'd say the way you respond to somebody that's maybe lost a family member or a loved one is just be there. Just be there. Be present. And let your presence speak for itself. You know, don't judge, don't dismiss, don't say suck it up, don't say you're going to move on, everything will be okay. You don't trivialize it. Just be there and be genuine, be authentic. And I think as difficult as it is for a friend or somebody to engage, it's a challenge for a mom or a dad or a sister or a brother or somebody that's lost someone to open up in the near term to accept people. That takes some time too. I found for myself, I needed to concentrate on breathing, and just taking care of myself, taking care of my family. But it's so important to know that you are connected. There is hope and there is healing, if you mentioned in your story. But I'll throw the ball to Kim. I don't think there's anything. Be present. Presence is probably the best thing you can.
I agree. I agree with presence.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Please go ahead, Kim. And,
Well, I know one
answer
thing with me that was great is I had an outpouring of support with Jesse being a high school student. Of course, all the kids, teachers, administrators of the school were there, friends, community members. I was really surrounded by a lot of people, which was wonderful. Not all of them knew how to talk to me, I found, but I tried to make them feel okay with it. That's just the kind of person I am. And I would just tell somebody, you know, a hug is the best thing for me. You don't have to say anything. If you're here being present and you want to give me a hug, that's great. I didn't even know what to say or what to do. You know, I was devastated, obviously. So I think my big thing is to just be supportive in any way you can. I had a lot of friends that just kind of chipped in doing things, knowing what I needed, where I didn't even know what I needed. I think the worst things that happened that I can say are the things you don't want to do, are completely stay away or ignore me. The friends that I thought I had that I didn't hear anything from, that never reached out, that really hurt. Also, when somebody would say, he's in a better place now, I didn't feel that way because he wasn't there with me. I didn't think that was a helpful thing to say. And another thing was, you know, well, thank God you have another child. that was not the right thing to say either. But that's my answer.
Kim, thank you so much for that answer. And so we take from that, from Greg, presence and being present, from Kim, just talk and be open, be there, hugs are the key. Very, very good information. Kim, can you tell us more about your son before he passed, and tell us more about the positive side of his life, and then talk about what maybe you believe led to his tragic loss, your tragic loss. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can do that. Jesse was what I would describe as the ideal son. I was so proud of him. He was funny and he had friends. He loved to be active. He was an athlete. He was, you know, and he wanted to be the best at everything he did too. He pushed himself to be the best. In school, he was the president of the Honor Society, the captain of the cross country team, the captain of the tennis team, the drum major in the band. He was a second lieutenant in ROTC because he joined late. Trying to think of all his other accomplishments, but I think the thing that impressed me, one of the most impressive things he did was he decided to get a job when he was 13 years and 10 months old. He went and applied for a job, even though he didn't have a work permit, and found somebody actually so impressed with him that they hired him. So he was working ever since he was younger than 14, and he saved all his money and he bought his first car all by himself. So I was really proud of him for that, and that independent streak. And I always felt that we were close. We always talked about everything. But I did start to notice in his senior year some struggles, I would say. And every time I talked to him about him, he would just say, I just have so much on my plate, Mom. You know, he was in AP classes and he was applying to college, not colleges, actually the Naval Academy and all the other military academies. And he was, you know, writing essays, waking moment, he had something he was doing. And so he just attributed everything to stress, the stress of senior year. I had a feeling there was more going on, but he never would talk about it. I did talk to him at one point about getting some therapy because I was worried about him. And he just said, no, Mom, that's not what I need right now. I said, what can I do? What can I do to help? He said, really nothing, just leave me alone, let me get my work done. And, you know, he would shut himself in his room with his laptop. And now I regret that I did that. In hindsight, I wish I had pushed him more to go get some help. I know that if he didn't really want to be there, he wouldn't cooperate though. I didn't see any warning signs at the time, but in hindsight, I saw that he was more withdrawn and that he was taking, this is one thing that stands out to me, taking very, very long showers for someone who has a buzz cut. And I think Kevin can relate to this. I couldn't understand why he would need a 15-minute shower. And I'd say, you're wasting all our hot water. And he would say, but Mom, it feels good. And in hindsight, I go, oh my God, you know, I know people with depression that say, you know, it's those little things that you got to hold on to. And that was one for him, I think. But yeah, I didn't see the signs. I know now because he left a journal that he was depressed for 3 years leading up to the suicide. But he didn't let his best friends know. He didn't let myself or anybody else in the family know. He didn't want to bring us down to where he was feeling, is what he said.
We tend to, when we're dealing with these kinds of things like depression, mental pain, we tend to, I call it brain pain. We bury our feelings, we silence our pain because we don't want to burden others with our struggles, even though if we had just asked those people how they would treat us if we were struggling, they would tell us they would love us, not judge us, and be there for us. Let me ask you a question, Kim. You know, and to be very clear, and to Kim and Greg, your son's passing away, that was not your fault. It was not. It was not. It's not a weight that you should hold on your shoulders for the rest of your life. It didn't happen because of you or in spite of you. It happened because of a lethal emotional pain that had nothing to do with you. And so when you look at that, I guess my question would be, trying to understand that this isn't my fault, yet it still hurts. But maybe looking back in hindsight now, what would you say to a parent who has a child who's depressed to help them keep their child alive? Does that make sense? Maybe a tough question to answer.
It does. And I actually have a friend doing that, so I can clearly answer that question. I mean, it's vigilance, really. I mean, you have to be checking in with them all the time. And at times you may have to sleep on the floor in their room if you're that worried about them. Make sure that there's nothing that they can use. If you know of what their plan and how they want to do it is, especially, it's draining. It's draining for somebody who's living with someone that's in that state on a regular basis. But it's something you do when you love somebody, and you do whatever you can to keep them alive.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim, for answering that. Greg, would you take your take on that?
Yeah, I think a couple things. And the dad, Jason Reed, tell the story. You know, things have changed in a positive way. So I'm encouraged that the fact that we're talking about this tonight through this medium is positive. So I think part of it is to normalize mental health, mental wellness, and talk about it like physical health.
Right.
There's no problem talking about I hurt my knee If my head hurts, we should have that conversation candidly as well. And then say, okay, so what are we going to do about that? So I think normalizing that and kind of mitigating the stigma that's been around for a while. If I had a do-over, because that's what I think we all deal with, and I did. I lost a Marine in 2005, so that was kind of my introduction to suicide. And I understood, and I was frustrated, and I wanted to learn, and I started to learn, and it's so complex. There's not one thing. But I did have a candid conversation with my son, and my son was 35 when he took his life. So it was in August. In June, he flew to Boston, and he did the overnight walk with me for 16 miles through the streets of Boston in honor of my friend, my Marine that we lost. And that night I asked Paul, I said, have you ever had thoughts of suicide? He goes, yeah. And, Dad, I wanted to ask directly. My dad had suffered with depression. I really didn't witness it. I was out of the home. And my son, yeah, I've had thoughts about it, but I would never do that to you and Mom. Now, for me, that was sweet. I kind of went, okay, I got the checklist. I asked, I was very candid. We're here together. We're not in the car, we're walking all night. And it was a very loving motion, an emotional bond. Things I didn't do. And it goes what to Kim said, whether they're an adolescent, whether an adult, whether it's a mom or dad, I'm more sensitized now about keeping the environment safe. Access to lethal means. In your case, it was the bridge. I didn't know that my son owned a firearm. I didn't know that. If I had asked that question, if I had been that sensitive and aware, and a number of other things. And to his point, he was a very proud young man. He goes, I got this. He was a Marine kid, and like Santini, Marine kids are special. He'd been through a life of moving around and adapting and very resilient. And he didn't want to disappoint Mom and Dad or show, that weakness or that pain. And so I think normalizing it for starters, being able to have a candid, direct conversation and ask, and keeping that environment safe. Time and distance between somebody that might be hurting in really a bad place from access to lethal means. And then all the good things that Kim talked about, and you did in your plan. There is medication. There are a number of therapies. Find one that works for you, and again, normalize it. So very complex, not as simple, and I apologize for the rambling answer, but that's why we're here, is to ramble a little bit and learn from one another.
Well, it's not a rambling answer. It's a very important and key answer. And both you and Kim have a great perspective on these matters. And it's important that we hear that as impacted family members. How do the people that are watching this panel help their loved ones move forward and not die by suicide? One of the things that comes to mind for our organization, the Hines Foundation, we have a thing called Conquer, and that's CNQR. And that stands for something very particular. Well, first of all, it stands for Conquer Your Pain. But second of all, it stands for Courage to Talk About Your Mental Health. How do we normalize the conversation with the end there? Q stands for Ask those very important particular questions. Right. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? And do you have the means on a regular basis? And R stands for Recovery, Living Proof. And so if we can help people understand that that silencing their pain does not make them courageous, talking about it is more courageous than not. Normalizing the conversation of mental health and suicide prevention at a very young age, in grade, grammar, and high school, where in the home, in the doctor's office, with your teachers and your counselors and your school nurse, all of these different folks should be asking these questions to people, whether they and asking their strong friends how they're going through, not just their friends who look like they're having a hard time, who seem like they're having a hard time emotionally, but check on your strong friends and see how they're doing, the ones that are hiding it very well. Ask them the direct questions. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? And do you have the means? And you ask those questions because the crisis text line has now determined through their algorithm that by asking that blunt, honest, true question, are you thinking of killing yourself, it gets more of an honest answer than the question, are you thinking of suicide, or are you thinking of self-harm? And that's just a statistical fact that we know now. And so when you ask those direct questions, those three in that sequence, after you've had a candid conversation about their mental health and you approach the individual and let them know how much you care and that you don't judge what they're going through, you can have a tremendous effect on their mental well-being. And they can see what happens in that situation is that you show them how much you care rather than tell them. And when we tell someone something, all too often it can go in one ear and out the other.
Mm-hmm.
But if we show them how much we care, we could potentially be the catalyst to saving a life. Back to Kim here for a moment. Kim, what would you say? And we talked about what you would say to parents about reaching out to their kids. What would you say now to the depressed young individual who is considering suicide? How do you break through to their psyche, if you will, and reach them in that moment?
What I typically try to do, because I've done this, is get them talking about things that interest them. And sometimes that's difficult if they're severely depressed because they've lost interest in most things. But I usually can find something that, even if I go and say, well, what did you used to like to do? Tell me about it. What did you do and how did it make you feel? And then if I can get them talking about something that made them feel more normal, then I can try to take the conversation to how can we work towards finding something that makes you feel that way again. You know, is there an activity or something we can do? Even if we do it together, I'll go with you. And it may not be necessarily a legitimate therapy, but if that's like a stepping stone to getting them to try even alternative therapies or technologies that will help their mental state. Hopefully they're on medication and seeing a therapist. Typically they are when I'm talking to them, but I find if I can get them to have some hope, if I can instill that little grain of hope for the future, give them something to look forward to, is kind of what I try to do to encourage them to get help.
Something to look forward to. Absolutely. That's I really like that. I can appreciate that. You know, one of the things that some psychiatrists use in methods to reach people of all ages who are suicidal is they say, you know, what can you do to just be here tomorrow? What can you do to get to this next 24 hours? What can you do? You know, hey, let's meet again on next Friday. So you give them something to hold on to that's going to happen, a concrete event or a concrete planned outing with someone or a group of people, friends, family, a doctor, that I'll see you on this date. This is what we're going to do, and this is why, and we're going to make you feel better. Greg, how would you answer that same question?
I don't know. I think, I have to listen and really try and connect with whomever at some level. And not so much to say, I'm going to fix this, but to Kim's point, to encourage them to get help. Because this is going to be something that's not sitting down with Greg, whether it be social worker Greg or Marine Greg. It's going to be something that kind of a motivational interviewing thing. That are they interested in what's next? In acknowledging that they need help and then accepting the fact that they will get help. And it's got to be their decision. So that, I think the one comment you said about we're going to get you well, I really would rather hear Johnny or Jill say, I'd really like to get help, and extend that invitation and find out what that might be. And I do this regularly, and you don't have to wait and use the crisis text line when you're in crisis. I encourage people to use it now, to give it a try. Just get hello. I think for young people in particular, they're going to connect maybe via that medium rather than the lifeline, or rather than certainly talking to a geezer, more likely talking to a peer. So, I think the good news is educationally, things like Seize the Awkward and other programs that are out there that can probably connect with young people more effectively than I. So I think listening to them, encouraging them, and really trying to get them to say, yeah, I could, not only do I need some help, but I'm ready to get some help. Yeah.
So instead of saying we're going to get you well, looking at it like how do we get the individual to say I want to get well, I want to be well.
Right.
Yeah, here's what I learned. I mean, I've learned it a lot over a lifetime. So one of the things is if you want it more than they want it, you're going to be a frustrated guy or gal, you know. And
yeah.
So I think we have to, especially when it comes to mental health, mental wellness. That's the complexity I think associated with the subject matter.
Yeah,
it's a great question.
And I have to be. Thank you, and I have to be honest with you. I can vividly remember being so distraught and so mentally unstable that my dad was really unable to reach me for so long, even after the Golden Gate Bridge jump. And no matter what he did, he couldn't motivate me to do the work to stabilize, because it does take hard work. It does take hard work, and it wasn't until and when I felt able to fight for my own well-being that things truly were able to change. So, and go ahead, Greg, you were going to say something.
I was going to say you can almost humiliate somebody by something. Life is worth living. Well, I've had people come up and say, that's humiliating somebody that's depressed. The counter was, I know life is worth living. I just can't do anything about it right now. Yeah. And for me, that was, for those of us that maybe haven't struggled with mental health, and a lot of the basis that we have here, somebody has a diagnosis, somebody is getting treatment. I think it's very challenging for folks that haven't been there to have an appreciation for what that might be. And that's important as well for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Greg. Kim, do you have any commentary on what Greg said?
I just wanted to say that I have found with young people that they do like the text line. I think that that was a great thing to come about, because that's how they want to communicate. They are not as inclined to want to talk face to face as our generation has been, because we grew up with that. So if they can have a little less personal way to communicate, it gives them something, when they're in crisis.
Thank you, Kim. And on that note, for all of those watching right now who have teenagers or young kids, or even adults alike who are going through a hard time, please put in their phone, grab their phone one day and put in their contacts, text CNQR to 741-741, the crisis text line. Make sure that's in their phone, in their contacts, and available for them. CNQR to 741-741. Once again, courage, normalize, question, recovery. That's our Conquer keyword for the crisis text line. And that allows us to track active rescues that go along in general, of which we've had now hundreds of active rescues since using that keyword. And that's really been a great gift to explore, is to see how that how we're able to see what things and what words used by the individuals texting determine their moods and their stability and their struggles, their suicidal ideation. All of that is calculated by the crisis text line algorithm, and it is fantastic to see the positive impact that number is having. So anybody who knows a loved one who might ever consider suicide, might ever be going through it, which could be anyone, please put that in their phone. The next thing I want to suggest to you, and we had a portion of this in one of our other videos, but I want to describe it here because this is a really great resource for everybody watching. Download on your loved one's phone, who you think might be having a hard time or could potentially someday, download on their phone the app Not Okay, the Not Okay app, NOT OK app. That app is just like my Art of Wellness 10-step plan, except that it is in digital format, and it allows you to pick 5 individuals to opt into your mental health emergency plan. And when you're not self-aware enough to take care of yourself, you just press one button that says you're not okay, and this alerts those 5 individuals that, you know, Kevin's having a hard time mentally right now. Someone needs to go and check on him. And so it's in lieu of acute psychiatric care or a trip to the hospital via an ambulance or calling the police. But it's really helped a great many people. And there are now over 1 million people on this app utilizing it and building their support networks. And they get a dropped pin of where you are physically, so they know how to get to you, and they can track you wherever you go. And you've allowed them to do that now with this Not Okay app, and it's been changing and saving lives. So please utilize that resource. It's a great one. Greg, we had Kim talk about the positive side of her son's life. Can you tell us about your son prior to his attempt and his passing away?
I had lunch with Paul 10 days prior, and I thought everything was good to go. He was planning a trip down to North Carolina to see my mom, his grandmother, with his girlfriend. So I was a bit removed. I wasn't seeing him daily. I'd see him maybe once or twice a month. He lived in Northern Virginia. I lived here in Southern Maryland. Again, probably the greatest Father's Day gift I had was him flying to Boston and us doing the overnight walk and really having a good conversation. So I don't know that I was I know I wasn't as aware as I probably should or could have been, just because of the frequency or infrequency of our contact. Paul was complex. He was a philosophy major in college. He was a bartender. He's a great thought thinker. He worked hard. He played hard. He was the life of the party. Not too unlike me. Not too unlike Major Johnny Rocco, the guy that took his life. And probably in retrospect, things I missed with Johnny, I missed with my son. And it's one of those things, Kevin, I wish I could give you more details. What I do know is, and Kim probably knows from AFSP, the risk factors, the warning signs, in retrospect, they are there. They're there in bold, bright, to include family matters, environmental matters, health matters. But as you're living the day to day, it's not coming through. I can tell you this. I want to talk about family, and you talked about your family, because where does it begin? 2 months after my son took his life, my mom came up. My mom is 93 in 2 weeks, and she couldn't talk about it. She didn't come up in the immediate aftermath of Paul taking his life, but she did come up, and I was taken to the airport, and she goes, "I got to tell you something. When your dad was a younger man, he had attempted suicide." At the time I was 62. It was the first time I had ever heard it. So when you talk about generations and the ability to talk, that was not happening. And I was out of the house when my dad was suffering with his depression. So, again, I can't tell you it was this day, it was this thing, it's so complex. Paul went to 3 high schools. A lot of Marine kids are very resilient. They're adapting. Some folks are not. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. So in retrospect, but I will tell you, unlike a journal, I did have a chance to read some of Paul's letters that he had written years later. And I think he was depressed. But he didn't have a diagnosis. And I wish I had a clean answer for you. I don't. But I'm here sharing a story. That's part of the get well and to share some of this.
That's part of the journey, Greg,
absolutely.
And your words are impactful and important for people to hear. your words are impactful, important for people to hear. And we're grateful that you're on this panel because you and Kim to share your experiences. I want to just stop here for a moment and talk to Kathy. Have any questions come in that we haven't answered? Are there any questions you might have, Kathy, that you think are important to be answered?
Hi, Kevin. This is Dana.
Hi, Dana.
Hi. We do have a few questions. We do have an attendee who has a question for you, Kevin. In the video that we watched, we got to hear you talk with your high school counselor for quite a while. And we heard quite a lot about what you were like as a teenager. And this attendee, her question for you is, she's curious if you can give us any more detail as your behavior when you were younger than a teenager. She has a 7, almost 8-year-old that is struggling with multiple therapists and medication.
Okay, absolutely. I'm glad to tell you about what I was like as a child. I was the life of the party. I was my family and friends called me the Energizer Bunny because I had so much energy growing up. And when you look at what I ended up going through in high school, it's easy to say maybe I was had the early onset of mania as a young child. I was horribly bullied in grade and grammar school in a way that was physical bullying. Kids beat me up. They called me names. They pulled my ears from behind me and called me Little Red N-word for being part black. It really was a tormenting time. I was a very sensitive kid, so sensitive, in fact, like when I would see a homeless person or a person without a home, I wanted to help them. I wanted to do something. I wanted to give back, but I didn't know how. But growing up as a kid, I was very energetic, almost too much for my parents to handle. And they do say today that could have been a sign that he was living with the diagnosis of manic depression or bipolar disorder, just like my biological parents before me. And when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 17, I had just been taken off my epileptic medications. I have epilepsy, and the epilepsy medication, the doctors didn't know at the time that it was a mood stabilizer and an antidepressant as well. So basically, up until my diagnosis, the mood stabilizers I was taking for my epilepsy were hindering the bipolar symptoms. So they came out as soon as they took me off those meds abruptly because the epilepsy was under control. And I had a complete mental breakdown, like you said, you've seen the video, where I was on that stage in front of 1,200 people, a complete mental breakdown. So that's the kind of story of how I went from childhood to adolescence and developed bipolar disorder. And so, knowing that you who asked the question are living, raising a child who is dealing with many therapists and many medications, one of the best things I think for you to do is to help your child, if he or she is willing, to become educated on a regular basis to the best of their ability about what they're going through. So reading books with them about the diagnosis, reading articles with them about the diagnosis that include proven reputable forms of treatment to benefit them mentally, getting involved in their extracurricular activities in a way that is supportive and engaging. All of these things can help them become a more well-rounded young adult as they grow older. And I really think that the more time you put in to educating yourself and educating them as to their diagnosis or their potential diagnosis, the better off they'll be in combating that diagnosis.
Thank you. We do have another question. This one is for Kim and Greg. So Kim and Greg, we heard from Kevin about his 10-step art of wellness And we were wondering, after losing family members, were there any sort of things that helped you, like that you now think of as part of your own personal art of wellness that you could recommend to other people who are now finding themselves in the same situation?
I can say yes. I found, for me anyway, that deep breathing, not exactly the same breathing exercises that Kevin does, but just taking a moment to take deep breaths in and out, at least 10 of them, helped to calm me and center me again. I always have done yoga, so yoga was good for me as well. You know, I did go to therapy. I did a lot of other things such as emotional freedom technique, craniosacral therapy, massage therapy, Reiki. I tried acupuncture. I did all kinds of things, whatever I thought might help. I was willing to try when I was struggling. So I think one of the things that helped me most, though, was getting involved in helping others. That really was the turning point for me, when I was able to reach out and try to help other grieving family members, as well as trying to teach those risk factors and warning signs to anybody who would listen.
Yeah, amen to that. I think I told you I lost a Marine, so I had a little bit of a lead turn, and I got to understand what grief was about indirectly, so that when I got thrown to that end of the pool in a more direct manner, I was aware that you're not alone, and that there is hope and healing, and there's a number of ways to do that, and to explore what works for someone. I used to be an athlete. I still stay physically active. I think exercise is good. We have a strong faith. So prayer. Our family and extended family has been tremendous support throughout my life, whether I've lost colleagues, and certainly when we lost our son. It continued volunteer work with AFSP and TAPS. And then just because, as Kevin said, you know, I was hungry, I committed myself to social work. I couldn't spell social work before. I couldn't. And it was only in the suicide loss world where I got to be introduced. And it was a very different way of thinking, like I said, from Marine Greg. And that's been helpful. And then lastly, we have 2 Irish wolfhounds. They each weigh about 150 pounds. And we go for long walks. I'll take them to the beach. I'll let them run like horses. We'll get up to the North Shore. I'll assume the exalted warrior pose, and we'll call it a day, you know. So, and we do that in honor of my son, in honor of my Marine, in honor of all those others that we've lost. And I think, great question, but those are the kind of core things that keep me working on it, and being able to share this with people, whether it be via Zoom or one-on-one, wherever. And I think that's all part of the wellness plan. And I thank Paul for that. I thank your son, Kim. I thank Major Rocco and others, so that we can make new mistakes and we can save lives, right?
Thank you. So I think that concludes the questions that I had. So I will hand this back over to Kevin and Kathy. Thank you all very much, though.
I would ask another question. It seems, Kim and Greg, in your situation, you know, in hindsight, you can look back and say, or when it happened, you weren't really sure about that. You know, it's not like your sons are like, hey, I need help. You know, when you, in retrospect, you can see some signs. And then Kevin, on the other hand, I remember him saying, you know, your dad knew there were struggles. So, you know, there's a lot of parents out there or family members that they've tried, and I'm sure there's a lot of frustration in I know they were struggling. I've done A, B, and C, and it still isn't helping, or it didn't help, and I don't know, Kevin, maybe you have something to say about that. I mean, I know there's people that are beating themselves up out there thinking they missed something. They should have done something different. Even, Kim said something like that. But, sometimes it's out of our control. Patrick Hines knew you were doing that and he tried. That's a frustrating spot for a loved one.
Yeah, it's a frustrating place to be, and he tried. But once again, nobody taught Pat Hines suicide prevention techniques, and no one taught him the questions to ask that would elicit the answers that may have potentially saved me from jumping that day. So it's not his fault what happened. We know that, but we need to be vigilant, like Kim said, and ask those direct questions. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life, or do you have the means? In a way that has a kind preface and a kind outro. Really, you think about like you're making a video. What are you going to say before that? Say, hey, I've got your back. I'm here for you. I'm not judging you. I just worry about you because I care and love you. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? And do you have the means? And then saying, if you've ever had these thoughts, I want you to know I'm a person you can confide in about them. And you're not in this fight alone. Rather than saying that you aren't alone, I'm going to say I know what it's like to feel alone, and I can relate, and we can talk about that. And I don't need to sit here and give you a whole bunch of answers. Sometimes I just need to listen, and sometimes I just need to listen intently to understand and not to respond. And I think that's a key thing that I'll be honest, my dad wasn't very good at. He was really good at lecturing me, but he wasn't great at listening to me. And it wasn't until he became a good listener with me that we made some headway in our relationship. And he would become the best man at my wedding, and there was no other choice. So to come back to full circle and answer your question, I think that we need to be bold, willing to ask the tough questions, willing to get into that conversation, ask what is the peak and the pit of your day, ask if this is a fix it or a feel it. Do I fix the problem now, or do I just feel it and understand it with you and be there for you?
And Kim, I'll tell you, I'm the mother of 4 teenage sons, which is wow on a lot of days, and we ride these fine lines of privacy. Do I open that door and go in there?
Right.
Do I make them mad? Everybody wants, you don't want conflict, and you want to give them privacy. So it's a difficult spot for parents a lot of times.
It is with the teen, especially because you want to pick your battles, but you want to be there for them, and you want to be supportive, and you want to be able to help and keep them well. So it is a fine line, like you said, and just don't give up.
Someone did add a question and said that if you do have a friend who has lost a child to suicide and you're trying to help your friend, but your friend's really struggling to have any hope, how do we get that conversation started to help them, be able to hold on to get out of that really dark place?
I'll tackle that first, then Kim and Greg, you feel free to comment after I do. But please, we want to hear what you have to say, because you are the parents, you are the ones who've gone through it. But I'll just say this: we live in a society where when someone dies by suicide, our only question is why. We need to stop asking the question why, and we need to start asking the question how. Do we look to living and find reasons to move forward? I don't think we can ever move on from a suicide. I've lost 10 people. I think about them every day. I can't move on from their deaths. I can look to the living, those who still remain, and find reasons and ways to move forward through my pain. And forward movement is not the same as moving on. I celebrate their lives. I celebrate their lives on their birthdays, the day they're brought into this world without that pain. And I do it with family and friends who love them just as much as I do. We celebrate their lives with birthday cake and a candle. And we let them know how much we care about them, how much they're valued, how much they're loved. and we want to make sure that we find ways to celebrate the beauty that they were and the light that they exuded from within them. And that you have to really be willing to ask that question, how? Greg or Kim, do you want to kind of chime in?
I can go. One thing I would say is make sure that they are taking care of themselves. Make sure they're eating, drinking plenty of water, getting some rest. Those are key, especially in the beginning, because I can't heal without that. I know it's easy to forget to do those things and just be there for them as much as you can be as supportive as you can be. Don't feel bad about asking them what they need and being willing to do it. And then try to find ways to encourage them to explore ways that they could heal. You know, everybody heals differently, but eventually it would be good for them to get involved in something again and not just sit and grieve. So it's using little things to encourage them to pursue interests again.
Thank you, Kim. That was a phenomenal answer. Very important. Greg, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm just going to say that there's so many resources. I think early on, I just devoured what I could read and learn. And so the resources, it helps. It helps that individual, if they are feeling guilt, to understand that maybe they shouldn't feel such guilt and forgive themselves, which is part of an early step to healing. Certainly back to the basics, eating and drinking, as Kim alluded to, but encourage them. Healing conversations, whether it be AFSP or some other organization, could be hospice, could be Kim's organization. There are plenty of good organizations, and I think acknowledging you need help and then accepting that help is part of it. And as a good friend, you be there and you support them and encourage them to do that, whatever you need. It's got to be their decision to get the help. Right?
Another thing I thought of.
Oh, yeah, please.
Oh,
No,
I just
please, go
thought
ahead.
I thought of this and I wanted to add it is I think it's important, especially early on, for them to tell the story of what happened. Especially to someone who they feel close to, because the more they can tell the story and go through that trauma again, it kind of lessens that trauma a little bit each time they tell the story. And that'll help them in the long run. So I do try to get all of my people in the group to tell their story of what happened. And I think it is helpful over time.
It is completely helpful, Kim. And, you know, telling their stories of their lost loved one is crucial for healing. Like you said, Greg, forgiving yourself for something that wasn't your fault is very important too, because you have this massive feeling of guilt. I can tell you that all 10 people I lost, I felt guilty every time. And I'm in this field for 20 years and it didn't matter. I felt guilty. Why didn't I call then? Why didn't I call more often? Why wasn't I there? Why wasn't I reaching out? And, you know, today that guilt has subsided, but it was through a lot of hard work to get to that guilt to subside. You know, it wasn't easy. And when you get those days where you miss them so much and it's visceral, it's palpable, you feel so empty inside. Like, what didn't I do? And that's an attitude you have to shift and change over time. But you know what, friends, you know, everybody watching, and Kim and Greg, thank you so much for your incredible willingness to be on this panel, the work you're all doing to change lives. Thank you for being willing to share the hardship you've been through and the struggles you're still going through in losing your sons. And you know, on a personal level, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for, because you are great parents, I can tell, no matter the fact that you've lost loved ones to suicide, your sons. It really, this kind of panel shows me what great people are out there in the world trying to do good things to change lives. So from my heart, from my gut to you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Kathy, I think that about wraps it up here, but do you have any more questions before we wrap up?
No, but I would just like to add, we already have a fantastic list of resources from AFSP, including a link to the Healing Conversations program that Greg mentioned. So everybody should be looking for that in their emails. And I hope that the caller is able to get some help for her friend and using some of the resources that we'll be sending out. And that's it.
Thank you, everyone.
Kevin, thanks. We're done for the night. And Kim and Greg, it has been so special to get to know the two of you, and very inspiring for all of us to have some hope and to feel like we can be able to help others. And I hope that we all can stay in good contact. Kevin?
I'm grateful that you reached out and asked me to be on the panel.
Amen. Hey, team effort. Happy to be on the team.
Team effort.
I'm with you.
For sure. Everyone check out their websites because there's some good stuff on there. The easy icons that you can click and say, that's me. Let me click. And you know, we have two more video series coming up. May 27th, we have one that's directly about veterans. And I think that's going to be a good one. And we're going to end it with our last session in June will be the men perspective. Great. So I hope you guys will join us, and Kevin will let you get back to the West Coast.
All right. Well, you guys take care, be well, and be here tomorrow.